Being cold has got to be one of the worst feelings in the world. It is definitely the one that I find the hardest to deal with. This is my fifth winter in Alaska, and I feel like for months it's just this nonstop battle against the cold. Like keeping your car from dying because it's gotten too cold, keeping yourself warm because no matter how many layers you put on, sometimes it just always feels so dang cold. I went on a winter camping trip just a few days ago and we skied out to a hot spring, and I was so excited because I thought it was just going to be so great. Turns out the hot spring, not that hot, and instead we got this like lukewarm water that we tried to sit in for a while before we just like couldn't bear it anymore. I started shivering and having to get out and dry off with this frigid wind was horrible. Like it was so painful. And it made me reflect a lot about the story that I'm revising right now. So I'm revising a mountaineering thriller competition novel where these people are fighting to summit this mountain, this cold, wintry mountain first. So there's definitely a lot of scenes where they're cold. And having that experience myself of just being just so uncomfortable, and that stress of when is the next time I'm going to get warm, because when you're in the elements like that, basic survival just consumes you. And that's so much of what you think about is just the necessity of needing to get clean drinking water, needing to stay warm, needing to eat. So, first of all, I don't think I'm including enough of that in the novel. I think I'm getting so caught up in all the thriller elements, all the drama, that I really do need to take the time in some of these chapters to show the survivalistic experience of it all. But the winter camping that I just did also made me think a lot about what this book represents, because this is the fifth thriller I've written now in 5 years. And I feel like each one of those thrillers is kind of a little time capsule as to how I was feeling at the time I was writing it. So I was including settings that drew a lot from my real life experiencing in places I've been, places I want to go maybe, or characters that might reflect people in my everyday life, whether good or bad, or experiences I've had that I want to think more on and really try to explore through a fictional world. And not to say that these fiction books are copies of my real life. Honestly, these hints are so interwoven and so deep. There is a lot of fiction amongst all of these real pieces of my life that I don't think that someone who didn't know me extremely well would be able to tease apart what's real and what isn't. But it's just given me a moment to really think about what I'm trying to do with this thriller novel, what it means to me more than just a novel, but encapsulating my experiences in Alaska, my experiences in the outdoors, as well as the characters and the themes in this story and what it means to me. And then also going back and reflecting on the other thrillers I've written while being in Alaska and what it was that I was tackling in those moments and what managed to filter through into the final drafts of those stories. It puts the whole revision process in a new light because I can get a little one-track minded where I'm just focused on the end goal. I'm focused on getting to the end of draft 2, this first round of revision, getting on to more, and it's not always about completion. There's a reason I wrote this story. I could have written any story when I set out to do a first draft last November, and I chose to write this one because this one meant a lot to me. And so I feel like I'm doing it a disservice by trying to just steamroll through it and get to the next draft and be able to call it done. And so I think that, especially because we're nearing the end of the story, we're in the second half of Act 2, but honestly, Act 3 is coming up pretty quick. I think my Act 2, Part 2 is pretty short. And I just want to sit in it a bit more. I want to enjoy the process of the revision. I want to enjoy being in this world because before I know it, I'll be done this revision. I'll be done, draft 3. I don't know how many more drafts. I'll be done a line edit. I'll be letting other people read it and they'll enter this world and they'll get to meet these characters and it won't be mine anymore. So while I'm still in the depths of it and figuring it out for myself, I want to try and take a step back from seeing it as this task I must accomplish and instead try and view it as a way to encapsulate potentially my last winter in Alaska and really think about what the story means to me and really trying to make sure that I'm giving it my all in the sense that I'm injecting it with all of the passion and love that I had for the concept when I first came up with it. So that's basically our goal. So for the next little while, as I'm writing, it's not about finishing a chapter. It's not about hitting a word count. None of that really matters. It's not about trying to fit my story into the 3-act story structure or worry about pacing. Right now, I just really want to get to this end of the story, flesh out the areas that are very underwritten, and just try and enjoy the story on a more instinctual level. So with that being said, I am getting kind of cold out here, so I'm going to go inside and get some writing done. The term I've heard thrown around for really trying to enjoy the process of something more than even potentially the end product. So in this case, enjoying the writing process regardless of the final book. I've heard termed as romanticizing. So you're romanticizing the act of writing, whether it's physically, like what's around you. So it's like lighting a candle, making a cup of tea, just changing the atmosphere, listening to music, but as well the mental shift of just enjoying getting yourself lost in a story. And I feel like that's such an adult way of thinking about it, because I feel like as you get older, you start to make all these like boxes for yourself of needing to do things a certain way, needing to mentally get yourself into a certain place. And not that I'm any different. Like, I feel like I'm the exact same way. I'm constantly overanalyzing how is the writing going, how is the book itself, and it almost feels like sometimes I spend so much time thinking about the project more than I'm actually like in the project doing the thing. But I did a lot of writing as well when I was a kid, and I don't remember doing any of this when I was younger. Like, I was writing in elementary school, and all I really wanted to do was write a fun story. And there wasn't the same pressure. And that might be partly because, at that age, it's like, are you really writing a book for other people, trying to get published, that sort of thing? But there was a joy in that I feel like I'm not accessing anymore. Like, I'm still enjoying the writing process, but it almost feels more academic now. Like, when I approach a story, I'm like, okay, my character needs to have, their thing that they're trying to improve on. I need to have this arc. I need to have the world building figured out, the relationships figured out. Everything needs to make sense. Whereas when I was writing as a kid, nothing mattered. I was just getting lost in the story, writing what I felt like writing. It was also more pantsing and now I'm more of like an outliner. I like to plot things out a lot more. Not that I think that outlining's bad. I think my stories have gotten stronger, because when I was younger, I often found myself almost emulating other books I read in similar genres. So the first complete book I wrote was in grade 6, and it was this paranormal shapeshifter story. And so I was really feeding into a lot of the stories I was reading that was similar at the time. And then in high school, I wrote a novel about a girl dealing like emotionally coming of age with a little bit of romance, again playing into the similar books I was reading at the time. Whereas now the stories I'm writing are a lot more for me. Like, I'm no longer trying to emulate what I'm reading, but I'm really trying to write books that I might not see on the shelf, but that I think would be really fun. So trying to tie in a lot of this like adventure drama into these thrillers. But it just becomes really hard because sometimes I lose that focus of why I'm even doing this, of I need to make this book really good for other people. But it's like, no, I also need to write this book for myself, because even if nobody ever reads any of my books ever, I'm still going to be writing them. I still enjoy it. So I think that's really the goal of this, is beyond just the external candles and tea and music and ambiance that I still want to do, because that stuff's fun for a reason, but really trying to hone in on that more childhood excitement, passion of just wanting to write the story for the story's sake and nothing else. And this is a really good time for me to be doing it because the section that I'm in, I've just been stuck in it for a while. I keep going back and tweaking things and moving forward, and I'm overthinking about how convoluted it might be. I actually spent some time today talking it through with my boyfriend to really try and figure out if it made sense. Maybe there is a better way of writing this section. I don't know. But I think it is working, and I need to just like commit to it. But I've been thinking recently that, especially in this section, I'm trying to play it too safe. I'm trying to imagine if it's realistic, believable, whatever. But I almost feel like I need to become more overindulgent and just like go for it. Like, this is a story about a character trying to get revenge, and a lot of her feelings are based in very real emotions, but her actions are pretty crazy. Like, a normal average human being is not going to go to the lengths that she goes to for her revenge. And I think I kind of need to lean into that a bit more. People don't read this kind of story for the believability, right? It's to escape reality. So I'm going to do one more pass, going back quite a few chapters now to the midpoint and going all the way through, because I've done all the reorganization and rewriting for this whole section. And then after that, it's going to ramp up to the climax of the story. And I think I'm just going to try and go for it. I'm going to try and not overthink it too much in terms of the details, in terms of the believability, in terms of the line by line prose. And I'm just going to go for it and have fun and really also play with the setting, because I feel like I haven't really been doing that as much. I'm actually thinking that tonight I might want to watch a documentary or a movie based around mountaineering or the mountains or the cold to try and get myself more into that headspace, and maybe it'll help inspire some description as I go through this section again. I ended up going back 9 chapters to the chapter just before everything really starts to ramp up in the middle of this story. So I actually went even before the midpoint. And from there, I just started doing, a very simple pass and really tried to enjoy the actual process of writing again. So really trying to feel like I'm in that scene and not think too much about what was coming next. If I'm gonna be honest, those first 2 chapters took a little bit of time to get through, just because I was really trying to give them the effort that I think they needed. Because when I draft, I tend to put a lot of effort and thought into the first half, and then somewhere, around the middle, the drafting gets harder, and my focus when I'm writing the first draft is just to get to the end, because around the middle is when you can stagnate a bit. And then I find that in the third act, at the very end, you have this driving momentum behind you to finish it. But really, just before the midpoint to Act 3 is where it can get really tough. I often find that I have to do a lot of revisions to this section. So I end up finishing this first pass of revision, the second draft. That section ends up looking a lot like my first draft quality, just because I haven't had the time to make it as good after I've done all these changes to the actual timeline. And so I want to try and elevate it to the quality of what comes before, so that way it's all on the same playing field when I move on and do more language specific revisions. While I was revising too, I was worrying that this section was maybe a little bit slow, but I have to say that now that I'm kind of reading through it at a bit of a faster pace, I think it might honestly be a bit too fast. I don't know. I felt like that section takes up a lot of the story just because it took me so long to get through it relative to what came before. But now I'm worried the opposite. But I just started on chapter 26, so I have 4 more chapters before I get to the chapter where I stopped and went back to. So I think I'm just gonna hold the course and keep working on it. It's definitely been nice to take off the pressure of a deadline of trying to make significant progress and just enjoying what I'm doing, because it really allows me to feel like I accomplished something even on days where I just work on maybe a couple paragraphs. And it honestly makes it easier to start editing, because a lot of times I feel like I won't give myself the opportunity to edit because I'm like, I'm not gonna have time to get through a chapter. But when you're not focused on these tangible results and you're just there to be part of the story, it's a lot less intimidating if you just have like 20 minutes, or if you just don't want to put in, you know, hours of work and just popping in and out whenever you feel like it. So far, so good. I am falling behind a little bit on the physical romanticizing of writing, just because I've been doing it whenever I have a moment and things have been a little bit busy with like work stuff. But I am planning on maybe trying to incorporate more like candles and tea and stuff. Also sucks because we haven't had milk for a few days, so it's been harder to make the Earl Grey the way I like it. But we'll be fixing that pretty soon, so maybe that'll be the next step. I've focused first on my mind, and now I'm gonna focus on the aesthetics. I've been trying to do a more physical representation of romanticizing the writing process for the last few days. So for the first one, I was really going for like the cozy vibes, hot tea, warm socks. The second time, I was thinking of trying to like dress up a bit more. It was my way of seeing, you know, like if you get ready like for the day, but for the writing, how that affects it. Because a lot of times I feel like when I'm writing, I enter more of like the cozy vibe with like blankets and hot tea and, you know, slippers or whatever, that maybe doing it with, you know, getting ready, dressing in, you know, clothes that you go to work, doing your hair, even perfume, maybe that would help. And then the third way was just yesterday evening, lighting a candle. And yeah, I will say I didn't go like all out for any of these. Like they're all very like doable for me on a day-to-day. And I kind of enjoyed it. I feel like I had discounted a little bit what the physical act of trying to romanticize writing would be like. And I was really thinking that the mental game of just like letting myself enjoy the writing and not really overthinking the story itself was going to be, you know, the big thing. But I found that when I was prepping to do a writing session by doing whatever, like listening to music or putting on warm clothes or putting on, you know, whatever, it really made me focus in on writing, where as soon as I sat down, I was able to just dive right into the story. Whereas I feel like if I'm just like on a whim, like, oh, maybe I'll start writing now, it takes me a little bit longer. So it's almost like the time it takes to set up kind of a more aesthetic or cozy or whatever you want to call it writing session, that time that you need to kind of get into it, you're spending it setting up rather than just like sitting in front of the computer waiting for it to start. I don't want to make every writing session that I do from here on out as official as that. I think I really do enjoy like a quick, oh, I only have 20 minutes, let me just write what I can do before I have to go do something. Or, you know, if I'm at work and I have like a bit of time at lunch or whatever while I'm waiting for like samples in the lab to be ready, then I feel like this whole process takes a long time. Like there were times where I wanted to write, but because I was like, no, I'm trying to romanticize the actual writing process or whatever, I didn't feel like I had the amount of time necessary to set everything up. Or I just didn't have the energy to really want to try and do that. So I think moving forward, like it'll be fun if I have like a free evening to try and set up a little bit before the writing, versus like I'm not going to make it mandatory where I can just, yeah, enjoy writing whenever I feel like it. So I think this whole effort was worth it. Like I feel really good about what I've done. I've been writing for I think almost 2 weeks now as part of this video, popping in and out. And so I went back to chapter 21 and I'm almost caught up with where I was before. So now I'm just finishing up on chapter 28, and then chapter 29 is the last one that's in draft 2 form before I have to start pulling from draft 1 again. So I'm almost through, 8 chapters, which I'm really happy with that progression. I've hit a section where I have to do a lot more reworking again, but I do really feel like this is elevating this section that was a bit more lacking because it was rougher than everything that came before. It's kind of bringing it up to the rest of the standard of draft 2, which will be really helpful when I go into more revision later. And so I think I might do that moving forward, kind of leapfrogging, doing that first pass, making sure, like the big developmental timeline changes are where I want it to be, and then going back through it a second time to make sure it's all at the same quality of writing. And then we'll see. I'm hoping it won't take me more than a month to get to the end of this draft because we are so close. Just when I'm about to rejoin, we're like a few chapters away from the climax. Has a little bit of an extended, like, not even resolution. It is maybe still part of the climax. Maybe it's like a second climax, but there's quite a bit after it as well. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed following along as I try to romanticize my writing process a little bit these last 2 weeks, and I'll catch you in another video.